Hello everyone, good evening. Welcome to our weekly meet and greet here at the English Book Depot. Every Friday at 5:30 p.m. we gather here to celebrate art, literature and culture that stay with us. And today is truly special as we are honored to host someone whose work goes beyond writing. It preserves memory, culture and history. Please join me in welcoming Sir Amadeep Singh, an acclaimed writer, independent researcher, and documentary filmmaker. After a successful corporate career spanning over 2 decades, he chose to dedicate himself to documenting and preserving Sikh and cultural heritage across South Asia. Through his books, Lost Heritage, he has retraced historical journeys, rediscovered forgotten sites, and brought Sikh legacy in Pakistan back into public memory. His work beautifully blends deep research with storytelling and visual documentation, making history feels alive and personal. So, we are truly grateful to have you with us today.
Thank you, Sneha. Thank you to English Book Depot for giving me this opportunity.
So, as we gather here today to celebrate art, literature, and culture, I would like to begin with your book, Lost Heritage, and your work. Sir, I would love to hear from you about your journey, how you transformed yourself from a corporate professional into an author and a dedicated documentarian of heritage. I read somewhere that you term yourself as an accidental author. Was there a moment in your life that pushed you towards writing or thinking deeply about identity or history?
So, for an accident to be caused, you should be on the road first, you should be driving. So, if you've not done that, then accident itself cannot happen, right? So, the reason I'm saying this is that in the hindsight, when you look back, it's a much longer journey than that, right? You don't become an author when you're in a corporate world. You are into the day-to-day world of, especially in the finance sector. I'm an engineer with a finance background, and you're working with American Express. You are day in, day out, just you know doing a job for the corporation to earn money, right? That's what you're doing. But there has to be something deeper inside you that has to attract you to finer things in life, right? And that's the path that you have to be actually transcending, right? Over the years, which shapes you up, and that's the journey that you're taking. And one fine day, an accident happens, right? So that's the accidental author that I call myself as, because unconsciously, from a very young age, I was delving into various aspects of history, philosophy, culture, musicology, explorations, and we are speaking in Dehradun, and I do give credit to my school where I did my 7th to the 12th standard in Doon School. One thing that it gave me was the freedom to explore, go into these midterm breaks. And in those days, we used to be just 4 to 5 kids going deep up in the Himalayas. And I'll now look back in today's world, it's not thinkable. But way back when I was in my 11th standard, we were actually scaling peaks at 18,000 feet with no supervision, right? And wearing Bata shoes and doing all that, right? So somehow the streak actually had come in from there. So in some ways, many skills had come together. My corporate job, when it came to an end in 2014, I didn't choose to become an author. It came to an end having served for 25 years. I now, when look back, I think all the ingredients were ready, and the energies were choosing to shut the door for you. And some things happened in the corporate side that shut the door on that side. And for me, the question was, this is the time in my life I want to actually go to Pakistan, which is the Indus region, which has become Pakistan today, and to essentially understand what my forefathers left back out there, right? Because in the creation of a new country based on religious boundaries, an entire civilization got uprooted from both sides in India as well as in Pakistan. Hindu Sikhs from that side had to move. Muslims from this side had to move. Punjab got devastated. People from UP, Bihar moved. Sindh moved this side. 1 million people died. 10 million people were uprooted. So the question then was that, where are these footprints of our legacy which have not been documented, right? I just wanted to actually go and experience that, because when you're reading for your history from such a long tenure, you are living in a dream world of the forts that in the Ranjit Singh's time were created in the frontier horizon in Attock at the Khyber Pass, Jamrod Fort. Where are these? Where did the wars with the British start from the Multan, the second war? Where did it start from? Where are our spiritual saints of that region where it was a very syncretic society? Where is Baba Farid's place? Where is Nanak's place? And those kind of things have all been deprived of our from us, right? They've been pulled away from us. And that's what pulled me. But in the process today, people go to the lands of Indus, which is Pakistan, more from a religious lens, because once the land is gone, the visas are only granted on religious basis. You don't have a choice, right? For me, the bigger question was why I called this as lost heritages. It resonates my feeling that we have lost something. And that's why I call it lost heritage. But when I call it as a Sikh legacy in Pakistan, because Punjab and the Indus region was very syncretic, these divisions of Sikh, Hindu, Muslim did not exist in those lands. But it has become a norm to look at it from a biased lens, or more as a defined boundaries lens. And if I have to talk to the people today, the question is, which lens am I seeing it from? Am I seeing it from the Islamic lens? If I'm seeing it from a Jain lens? If I'm seeing it from a Hindu lens? If I'm seeing it as from a Sikh lens? Whichever lens you see it from, Punjab tells you a very syncretic story. So I had to see it from the lens that resonated with me for the history that I had delved into. So that's the answer to your question as to I just went into the country in the year 2014. I was already a photographer. I did not go to write a book. I just went to experience. To me, religion was not attracting me. To me, what was attracting was where are these vast footprints. I didn't know how I'm going to access it. Something happened beautifully in my life, and I went to about 36 cities and villages in the making of the first book. Much later, in the making of the second book, which is The Quest Continues, Lost Heritage and Sikh Legacy in Pakistan, I went into about 90 cities and villages. And this does not only include Punjab, it also is Kashmir, Gilgit-Baltistan, West Punjab, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which is close to the Afghanistan region, Sindh and Balochistan. So I've had an opportunity to travel to across a large landscape of the entire Indus region. And when I came back, in the making of the first journey, when I came back, that's where it started dawning on me, is that no one has written this since partition, right? There are one or two books, and Iqbal Kaisar Sahib in Pakistan had done a book on Hindu and Sikh shrines of Pakistan, and it's a good book, but it's just black and white photographs with some 2-3 lines. It serves a purpose, and you have to give knowledge comes in layers. Anyone that adds knowledge expands it for the next generation. So he had done a particular work. He faced a lot of challenges in doing that work in 1990s. The Pakistan government was not as welcoming at that time, and they saw it as something going against the state, right? And he faced a lot of challenges. But when in 2014 I went in, for me the question was, I've seen such a vast landscape. Why did the energies choose me? Why did the gates open for me? What's my contribution to the society? Because at least in my community, they say 1/10 of your earning should be contributed for a good cause. And when I look back at my career, I said I had not contributed the 1/10 towards a good cause. Maybe this is a time value of money that I have to contribute now. I should write it down, right? Because that's the piece, and that's how I spent time writing the first book that grew into the second book, and that's how the journey started. So that's why I called myself as an accidental author, because I transcended a road, and the accident can only happen thereafter, right?
Thank you, sir. I think it was more of a personal calling than just a project, and it feels very, deeply personal. So I would like to, ask you that you visited a lot of, areas in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and around these areas. So what were the biggest challenges during your travels, and, how did you cope up with it?
So my books, the scope is limited to Pakistan, what became Pakistan. We've done another body of work after that, the Guru Nanak documentary series, in which we traveled across 9 countries, but that's a different topic altogether. So Afghanistan gets a footprint in that. But of course, Afghanistan border is where I traveled up till, that's the Torkham border, in the making of these 2 books, right? So this book's scope is only Pakistan, Sikh Legacy, Remnants in Pakistan. So your question was just
Biggest
biggest challenge.
challenges
So you see, the challenges are, today I see the world has in the case of Pakistan, from 2014 to now, we are sitting in 2016, right? 2026, right? A lot has changed. I see every second person in Pakistan has now started owning the legacy footprint, and they've started creating videos, right? They've started writing. Every second person is doing it now. 2014 was a void. There was no one doing it. Even to write a book, even to talk about Hindu, Jain, Sikh legacy was considered as you're doing something against the nation state, right? Because that's the narrative that had been suppressed. A lot has changed. The seeding is where the biggest challenge happens, right? I see personally, I'm very distant from these books now. I don't see myself with these books because my bodies of work have evolved into something very different now in the last 13, 14 years. But I see when you did these books, you seeded something. Now, if you look at a farmer, and a farmer actually seeds something, it has to do a lot of work in terms of cultivating the farmland, seeding it inside, watering it, and look at the way that the seed sprouts. I mean, it has to work against the gravity. It has to work against the pressure of the soil to sprout. That's the kind of metaphoric problems that are there in doing this work. In 2014, to be specific, the biggest challenge was, how do you get access? There's a desire in your mind. How do you get access? But before the access, the question is, what are you trying to go and research? You don't, if you have not spent your life delving into the elements of history, which is beyond the religious realm, you would not even know where to go. So one is that, and that piece of history, it should be the second being inside you. And something that I've been reading, and I give a lot of credit to writers like Hari Ram Gupta, right? He did 5 volumes on history of the Sikhs, and the kind of documentation, detailed documentations that he has done was my source of inspiration. But I had read it way back when I was 20s, right? So I was living in this fantasy world. The journey of reading itself and sedimenting of layers cannot happen, has taken ages and ages. That's the biggest challenge. When you start a research project today, if you say, I want to do a PhD, you are getting into a structured environment to do a PhD, and you work on that system. So it's like, you know, A, B, C, D, and you're going towards Z, right? In this case, you were unconsciously doing. If you wouldn't have done that preparation, that's the biggest challenge. You would not even know where to go, right? So that's number one. Second is, when you want to go, how do you get access? That's where I would say, one is your self-effort, the other is a divine blessing that opens up the gate for you, right? Two things in this kind of a work has to come together, because I always say, why should the energy up there choose you to do this work and not someone else? Because this is a geopolitically sensitive area. And from an India-Pakistan context, you're born in India. If you go too deep inside into the territory of Pakistan, I don't mince the words to say, you will be a suspect in India. How did you do it? If you do it there, the intelligence will be at you after that. So you're always walking on a razor's edge, metaphorically, right? So that's the second biggest challenge. Third bigger challenge, not so much for the book, is that personally in my case is, when you're inside, you're operating on a very tight time frame. You got a 30-day visa. Second book, I had 60-day visa. I did 36 cities and villages in 30 days in the making of the first book. Second book was 60 days, and I did 90 cities and villages. The pace at which you're going, one is the coming together of the people of the land itself. Because if you try and saying that, you've done everything, no, you are just one Lego block of a bigger ecosystem that rallies around you. Why should that Lego system come together? You don't know people there. You just went in, and people just saw the energies and started coming together. That's the divine gift that starts happening. People start taking you forward, and at a very rapid pace you start doing it, but it requires finances, right? And in today's world, without finances, you can't do anything. Because it's not like writing a book in the comforts of your home, right? You are paying, if it's going to cost you $100 to get from one place to the other place, for me, that $100 is more important than anything else, because this is not going to repeat in your life. That's the third problem. Fourth biggest problem is that the world today does not give you, in a high cost country that you're living in, does not give you the luxury, unless you are financially sound, to take on these projects, right? I was working in the financial sector. I was living a life of I was to work hard, but I had a cash flow coming in, right? The desires want you to continue to grow in that direction, right? But the reality is you have to actually break that shell in your mind to understand that basically you just need to manage your needs to live your life, right? And that takes a while, because if you're living in a desire filled world of the corporate structure, where money is the only criteria, it takes a while to understand that, oh, you don't need more than this. It's when you understood that, I think that's where your mind kind of starts settling down, and you say, okay, life is not just about money, life is something more bigger than that. It takes, most of the people fail out there. So these are some of the challenges, I would say.
Yeah, it was more of like logistically hard, and but you overcame that, and it's like it is a privilege that you did it. So I would like to ask you now, not only through your writings, your book Lost Heritage, but also with your photography and film, do you see your work more of as a research or also as artwork to contribute to the world?
I don't know what I see it as, to be honest. I just did as a person who felt very strongly that a footprint needs to be documented. It's for the viewer to see what you want to see out of it, because legacy is not a specific. You see, you could do. There are many books that are touching. You can say Hindu temples of Punjab. You can say art of Punjab. You can say stories of Punjab, right? But when you do a book like this, where it's got a broad title of legacy, your drive is the journey that you're performing. In the journey, what unravels in front of you is what you're documenting, right? So if a fresco dawns in front of me, you are documenting that story of that building with that remains and ruins of the frescoes, and the next could be the story of a human being, the next could be a story of a fort, how it's unraveling. There are multiple facets outside this. There's also facets of history that has been actually, because the sovereign nations have an agenda everywhere, right? The political structure has an agenda to tell a story which meets their particular object, and unfortunately in the divide of Punjab, based on Hindu, Muslim and Sikh identities, because we lost all our history on that land, from the Sikh perspective, 90% of our history actually churned, the most glorious chapters churned in the lands that we've lost. So now in the Pakistan history books, there is a chapter, and this is a fact, I've seen the books in the Punjab University of Lahore, that there's a chapter starting from Muhammad bin Qasim, where the history of Pakistan starts. It doesn't start from the Vedic era, right, or the prehistoric eras. It starts from the advent of Muhammad bin Qasim, because that's the history they want to tell. And then it comes to the point of the Mughal dynasty, and it stops there. The rise of Ranjit Singh is eliminated totally. And then comes the advent of British in 1849. So the entire history has been suppressed. So now when you're actually getting inside and looking at the stories that are being told to you, written on the boards, like let's say Badshahi Masjid or the Lahore Fort, the stories that are written there are written with a bit of a evil intent to show that particular era which has been wiped out as the most negative period of Pakistan's history. And history is never black and white, it has grays and shades, right? So sovereign nation can choose what story they want to tell, and that gets documented, right? And therefore, as countries evolve, the next generation learns only the conditioned narratives that are being told to them. So the Pakistanis have been hearing that, and to them, oh, our masjid got desecrated by Ranjit Singh. That's not true. Ranjit Singh took away the marble from Jahangir's mausoleum and put it inside the Lahore fort. That's not true. And so you're trying to actually also bring in that element of the history inside this. So all I'm trying to say is that there's so many facets that you're trying to present as it's evolving, right? So it's left to the viewer as to how they want to see it. To me, it's a revealing thing in this whole journey as to how black and white we tend to tell our past, but actually it's a shade of gray.
Okay. So, do you think there were any moments in your research and documentations that like made you really think as a writer?
Think.
Yeah.
Every moment is a think. It's a moment of reflection. uh, I'm now very far away from that period. Let me put it this way. From a very young age, I was born in Gorakhpur, and my first book that I read probably was History of the Sikh People by Gopal Singh. Then I read Khushwant Singh, and then I read many more books. Hariram Gupta I read later on. And I used to, as a young kid, I mean, in my youth, I used to wonder, this is such a glorious chapter, and no one talks about it in my community because it's been pulled away. The umbilical cord's been snapped, right? So I used to think about that. Why don't people talk? Why isn't this visually there? To the point when you went inside the country and you started seeing those things, the emotion surges very high. But you got to keep one thing in mind. You are not there to experience this as there's a bigger purpose for which you are there. You're not there to get lost in the emotion. You are there to take away what you have to take away. So while I may be feeling inside it, but my mind is always trying to see, how do I get to the next place? How do I capture that? How do I do the next thing? Is anyone following me, right? Amongst all that, your mind is of course trying to do many things, but it is in a very emotional stage, but you can't express that emotion, right? The most emotive moment was when there's a chapter in the book called Meeting Noori, right? And Meeting Noori is my distant bhua, right? My distant aunt, who was 4.5 years old when she was left. So we are people from Kashmir. We are not from Punjab, by the way, right? So my parents came from Kashmir, which went towards into Pakistan. We had lands on both the India side in Uri and in Muzaffarabad, and which went into Pakistan now. And she was just 4.5, 5 years old. And when this Punjab got partitioned in the August 1947, the Kashmir problem starts on 21st October 1947, when the mercenaries brought in from the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa area beyond Peshawar and into Kashmir. They crossed the bridge on Jhelum River in Kashmir, in Muzaffarabad, and the war cry that we had been told about in our family was Hindu ka zar, Sikh ka sar, right? Zar is daulat. So loot the Hindus and behead the Sikhs. And my mother-in-law, my wife is from Dehradun in race course. She lost her mother in that shootout that happened at the bridge. Both the sides, my side and my wife's side, we have a lot of tragedies that happened in that massacre that happened on 21st October 1947. It's not the divide of Punjab. It's much later. Kashmir problem starts close to about 2.5 months after the divide of Punjab. And the Kashmir story is not told till today. People talk about Punjab's partition. How many people talk about Sindh? The Sindhi loss is because the people did not get divided. They got uprooted, lock, stock and barrel. How many people talk about the Balochi Hindus, the Balochi Nanakpanthis, the Balochi entire society who got uprooted because it didn't get divided? The entire focus is Punjab centric. So the biggest challenge for me in terms of emotional angle was this distant bua of ours who was named Jaswanti, and she lost her parents and later on was adopted by a local Muslim family out there. She grew up as Noori. Finding her in Rawalpindi and going to her home and being welcomed, right, and then being cautious in writing about her to not reveal her identity. I chose not to show her picture in the book, right, but I wrote a story, right, and then the second time when I went to Rawalpindi and gifted her the book, and she asked me the question, why didn't you show my picture? And that's when I realized that she's not ashamed or she's not bearing that burden in her mind, and she wanted her story to come out with the picture, and I had to apologize to her that, sorry, I thought I was trying to protect your identity, right? But these are the most emotive moments, I would say.
Thank you, sir. Now, I would love to turn this into a shared conversation, and I would love to have our audience to connect with Amadeep sir with any of the questions or reflections. Yes, sir. Jugjeet
Well,
sir.
sir, Jagjeev sir is talking right now. Okay, let him, then I will.
Okay.
Go ahead, Meenakshi.
I was just wondering, like, I've heard a lot of stories about partition. I lived in West Bengal, okay, at Calcutta, and there has been many stories uh, about partition in that part and how people, suffered. Okay, and we just heard them as stories. We just heard them as stories. We never, I mean, I don't think we ever understood how deep it went. And I think your story has actually the film that you showed, and this this exhibition about the Sindhis. We've never thought of Sindhis, though they were uprooted and everything. We must have understood it somewhere along the line, but not fully. Just recently, I mean, I can relate to the fact that it must have been horrifying for them, and I'm grateful to you, sir, that you brought in that feeling to within me. That sort of an empathy will be, I mean, understanding, I would say, whereby I would probably be able to understand the pain more and the problems more. And thank you so much, sir. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Meenakshi. So, though yours is not a question, it's a comment, but can I add to that for you to
Yeah,
reflect
sir.
a bit deeper? See, when a divide happens, well, let's say two brothers, right? When they divide, yeah, and there's a property. Property gets divided. Property gets divided into two parts. Each brother anchors on their property, and the life moves on. Yeah, that's
Right.
typically how
Yeah.
it happens. There's a the narrative doesn't stop there. But imagine, what happens is that uh, a divide which is one side gets a land, a building, or an apartment, and the other side only gets just the liquid asset or does not get anything. The
Yes.
story of the two brothers' evolution will be so dramatically different, I can tell you. And let me take that example. I can tell you in my case, right? I mean, we were six brothers, right? And I was the youngest. I got nothing because I was too young. My story is very different from my five brothers. God bless, none of them are here. But it's a very different story. And I want to take that into the context of partition. When we talk about Bengal and Punjab, keep one thing in mind. These are land masses through which the line got divided. Painful, but each side got a land. When you get a land, the story reshapes. So let's take Punjab. Punjab, when I look at it from the Sikh and Hindu angle, the story before partition from the founder of the faith, Nanak did not find any faith, by the way. The faith followed him. But a person on quest who led a movement in the region of Punjab, Nanak, his birthplace happens to be Nankana, the so-called Mecca in the inverted commas, as a place of importance. In the Punjab context was always Nankana. Post 1947, that piece of land got lost, Nanak's birthplace. The community of Punjab redefined themselves to Amritsar and to the Darbar Sahib, to the Golden Temple as we call it today, and we are anchored into it. I'm sitting in Singapore, I'm anchored into the language. A Punjabi is anchored into Punjab, and you have the Bhangra, you have this, or you have all the evolutions happening from an East Punjab perspective, which is not the narrative of Punjab, which is a small piece of tail actually, a hair of the Punjab hanging on this side, which we inherited, but we got something to define ourselves. Now, you take the story of Sindh, you take the story of Balochistan, you take the story of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and then you take the story of my ancestors, Kashmir. Who talks about Kashmir? Kashmir is not a divided territory. Kashmir is a line of control that goes in. If it's a line of control, no one talks about the partition of Kashmir. No one talks about the stories of Kashmir, what we have lost, because it's not divided as yet. India will not talk about it because if India says we've lost that land, politically what you're saying is that land belongs to Pakistan. You're actually subtly acknowledging it. Pakistan doesn't talk about this side stories from that angle, because the moment you start talking about the stories like you talk in Punjab, you acknowledge that that land belongs to India. So that's the dilemma of Kashmir. Sindh is a big, big loss. people don't realize. Sindhis themselves don't realize, because they lost the land lock, stock and barrel. And they moved. When they moved, wherever they fell, whether Singapore or Indonesia or Australia or Pune or wherever they left, that was their new home. That's where their identity had to be shaped. That's where their language had to be anchored. That's where their culture had to be anchored. Sindhis lost everything in the process, and the Sindhi of today is a different breed altogether, different to that of a Punjabi who still anchors into his root out of East Punjab. That's a big one. And I'm telling you, the last piece out here is Balochistan. In my research, I've learnt a lot. You know, in Karachi, there's a temple called Bhagnari Temple. In the Indus region, there was no temple distinctions between temples and gurdwaras. If you see my book, the art, frescoes and other things tell us about a very syncretic form, which today Punjab is very different now, right? But in these ruins, I see a very different Punjab. In Karachi, there's a Bhagnari temple. One room is a gurdwara, one room is a Shiva temple. It's the same Bhagnari temple, right? The Bhagnari community is a Balochi community, a Balochi Hindu community. I have had the ability to learn from this research some of the Balochi communities' last names, right? And as I've gone into the Bombay and I've come across these people, I tell you, they themselves are lost. They don't even know of their Balochi origins. They don't know where their forefathers were from. Either they've subtly severed that entire narrative from their minds, or they just have lost it, right? Now, in this context, I'll end it here. Empathy, you use the word empathy, Meenakshi. It's very important to have empathy. You know, I grew up as a Sikh, and I faced a lot of jokes around the Sikh aspect, right? The glorious chapters of our history sometimes was just turned into a joke, right? But you look at the Sindhis, we have ridiculed Sindhis to a large extent as money-minded, as this and that. You know, they are a source of fun for people to make jokes. Imagine a community that loses everything, has to redefine themselves. Why will they not be focused on money? Carpet has been pulled under themselves. The entire landmass has been lost. Empathy is very important. And that's what I would like to stop.
Okay. Jagdeep sir is also there raising their hand.
So Amardeep, through this process of interacting with you, there were a couple of misconceptions that I had, and maybe you had, I don't know, which got cleared, right? So let me give you an example. One is in terms of what Nanak said. One was around monotheism versus monism, right? The other, and you mentioned Ranjit Singh today. I mean, you've talked in some of your talks around how it was not a Sikh empire, but it was like Lahore Darbar. Are there sort of more such misconceptions that you sort of came across?
Oh, absolutely. The history that you've inherited, the narratives that you've inherited are black and white. Either there's a religious lens, the religious institutions have an objective to actually promote that kind of a narrative, which we were all born into being conditioned, and that's what we have been told to believe. It's right. But it's never black and white. Or it's a political nation's narrative, or it's a region's narrative. There are always biases and conditions that drive narratives, right? There are many such things, absolutely. I have often given this example. Two of them I'll give you from art, because I was asked earlier about art, and I'll give two examples from the observation on the frescoes of how forward Punjab was at that time, and the narrative today is very, very boxed. So I'll tell you at the Bhoman Shah Darbar, which is in Dipalpur, right? By the way, Bhoman Shah community came to close to, and we are speaking in Dehradun, close to Ponta, there is a Bhoman Shah Darbar, right? Till their previous spiritual leader passed away, I think a year back, the Guru Granth Sahib was an integral part as Gita and other things in their darbar out there, and that's how the syncretic thing was, right? Inside the Bhoman Shah Darbar, I see a fresco which tells me a beautiful narrative of women's empowerment, right? Way back 1800s. It's a fresco from 1800s, right? Today's empowerment that we talk about from a woman's perspective, it's seen from a lens of a woman must go to work. A woman must be a bread earner, right? A woman must be in equitable space as a man is. That's how we see empowerment. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, right? That you have the freedom of doing what you have to do. But you see, there are certain inherent traits of every sex. Every gender has a particular inherent trait. Why do we call Dharti Mata? In Gurbani also, Pavan Guru Pani Pita Mata Dharat Mehet, right? Mata is Dharat. It's a feminine aspect of metaphorically saying that a woman has a nurturing power. Women's empowerment lies in the mind. Woman is a nurturer. As a nurturer, she can go and fend for things. And history has taught us that. History has many examples of her leading the front, but as an inherent quality, you can't say women's empowerment is beyond nurturing, right? So when I'm looking at the frescoes, I see an interesting observation there. I mean, I'm talking about 1800s. A woman is sitting on a horse and leading a hunt, and a man is sitting on another horse behind with a falcon on his hand and observing the woman going on a hunt, and she's shooting an arrow to kill a black buck deer, right? Now, in that society, of course, woman is not working as we define as corporate working woman today, right? But she was empowered to lead a hunt. That to me is the beauty of this entire structure that has got kind of blackened and whitened today, right? And then the second piece I'll tell you how the narratives have evolved. I mean, in the ruins of gurdwaras, I say sometimes, I was asked by someone, when will you do this kind of work in East Punjab? I said, I'll never do it. And it was a forum happening in Delhi, and he said, why? I said, look, I have nothing against East Punjab, but why do you want someone from Singapore to come down to do something which is geopolitically not sensitive? Do it yourself, first and foremost. Second thing, what is there for me to learn inside it? We have destroyed our entire heritage ourselves out here. We have made them all white structures, gold marble laden structures. Where's the art inside it that tells me what my forefathers were thinking? And in the ruins inside this Pakistan, which have been, only time is acting on it. And when I went in, it was 2014, right? It was before 70 years, close to 68 years, right? And I'm seeing in these ruins frescoes of Shravan Kumar inside Gurdwaras. Right? And I look at the Shravan Kumar fresco, and that tells me not the story of what today's narrative will be. It's a Hindu fresco, right? Well, it's a beautiful fresco of a story of giving respect to your parents. There's nothing Hindu, Muslim out here. It's an Indic tradition story, right? So I think these are the fractures that are there, which are hard to actually digest, and we've been given narratives which are black and white.
Right. Sorry, go ahead.
No, sir, you please carry on.
Why don't you just share with everybody what you're working on now and how it's sort of come about?
Oh, I mean, I always say to the youth as a motivation, right? Do what you control. Don't in this space. I mean, look, we all have to earn our bread and butter. That should be the primary stuff. Without bread and butter, you cannot do anything else. But there has to be a second you. The second you has to be anchored in the finer things of life. That's where the beauty sprouts, right? And you sometimes don't control what that other thing is going to be, but what you control is the passion, the dedication, and when the energy chooses you, always when you complete a project, something else is sprouting right behind you. You may not have noticed it. It's like in a garden, right? The next fasal is just coming out. You just have to turn back with your plow and just nurture it and make it grow. And that's what has been happening in these projects. So from Lost Heritage books, all I gained was one skill set. I mean, I'd been reading Nanak for long enough, right? I'd been reading the Indic saints for long enough. But I did the documentation in the region of Pakistan on the legacy remnants across 126 cities and villages. What I figured out, what they say in the corporate world is focus on your core strengths. Don't broad base you to the extent that you've got your fingers in everything. Focus on your core strength. I understood in 2018, 2019 that my core strength at that time, which had evolved, was working in geopolitically sensitive areas and being able to succeed to get to the point of the narrative, right? It's very challenging to get into Afghanistan, into Pakistan, into Iran, Iraq, Tibet with cameras, drones. I just focused on that aspect. And it was not easy. The doors opened. We did the Guru Nanak docu-series, 24 episodes. We gave it back. The next thing that opened up was, if Nanak is boxed and the Indic saints are boxed, well, Nanak went to Baba Farid's place and he documented his verses. Why did he do it in a time when narratives were only passing down through the oral tradition? Why did he document it? And how did, in the time of the fifth Sikh Guru, which the Sikhs have not done a good job in telling the world, that the narratives of 15 Indic saints from Bengal, Joydev, to Kabir in UP, to Ravidas in UP, to Namdev in Maharashtra, to Dhanna in Rajasthan, came together and came into the scripture. Why were they doing it? If Nanak wouldn't have documented Baba Farid's verses and not documented his own stuff 550 years back when there was only oral tradition happening, maybe the evolution would not have happened. Maybe the writings of Kabir, which is an oral tradition, because Kabir's verses in Bengal changes as compared to Maharashtra, as compared to Karachi, but in Punjab it has been documented, right? That's a beauty that's been given in terms of inclusion and diversity. And that became the purpose of our next project, how to bring about the musicology out of this 1653 shabads of these diverse 15 saints and Nanak, and then looking at the metaphoric translations, because when we were doing the docu-series, we realized the translations that we are anchoring on right now are quite literal. And I'll give you one example. In our Indian tradition, we'll say, in the Gurbani, there's one line comes in, an Indian can understand it, but the world wisdom platforms will not understand it. It will say, Charan Kamal Tohi Tohi Piva. It's an act of submission. It's an act of total surrender that you're saying, the translation says, washing your lotus feet, I drink. What does that tell to a Gora sitting out there? What does it tell to a Chinese? What does it tell to a Brazilian? I can understand it because it's my tradition. There's a humbleness, there's a submission. We have a different way of speaking that out. If I have to bring my Indic saints on the world global platform, I have to talk the language of that, what they understand. If I can read Lao Tzu from China, someone in China has translated Lao Tzu in a language that I can understand. So we had to reapproach our entire literal translation into metaphoric translation. There's a huge body of work that's underway. And we are at a point where 1/3 of the scripture is nearly complete. We've recorded 1653 verses for the first time. For the first time, Nanak and Kabir have been 100% recorded and just recently been released on all the music platforms. But we are doing the metaphoric translations, which will finish by next year. I was in US just about 1 month back, and my ask to some of the community forum members was, if we've completed 1/3, as one brick layer, musicology and as well as metaphoric interpretations, should we expand this and complete the entire scripture, which has close to 5,000 verses? Now that's like, you've completed 1/3, the 2/3 is still lying there. You've not jumped into the entire scripture. All you're saying is, do I have the right to advance? Is the next sapling growing right in front of me? Have I proven that this is resonating? Should I expand? The resonance says you should. The gap is that the money is not there. Now, this is where your faith comes in, that you've done a 13-year journey, and where it was required, the parachutes did open, right? So at this stage, I have become pretty much submissive to the point of saying that it's a massive, daunting task right in front of you. If it has to get accomplished in your lifetime, I'm 59 years, it's probably 7 more years of my life dedicated. Resources will come. That's my belief. Because unless you ask the energies will not respond, right? That's what has been my entire pursuit. I don't have the money right now. I just have a vision. And in this AI world that we're talking about, you can't stop the AI. What you can do is correct for the garbage in, because when you anchor on the garbage in as literal translations, you'll only get garbage out. AI world I can't stop. It's going to be the way. How do I find the alternative to put there as a metaphoric aspect? I'm not saying my translation is the perfect translation. It's an alternative view, right? And how do you put an alternative view which has been tested in time, accepted in time, and people are saying, yeah, this is also an alternative sense, right? When you talk about monotheism, monism, the normal translations make it, as you read any jap of Guru Nanak, Japji Sahib, right? It starts with Ek Onkar Satnam. God is one, His name is truth. Sorry, how does it matter His name is truth or His name is Ramu, Shamu, Amadeep? How does it matter? What does it mean? It basically metaphorically means Naam is a reflection, contemplate on this Sat, the reality, that Onkar, Om, which comes from creative sustenance, destructive power, which you in the Sargun movement will say Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, or you say in the Nirgun movement as creative sustenance and destructive power, which takes a form, Akar, Onkar, is intertwined into one ecosystem. Then God is not a separate, distinct entity, right? It's one ecosystem. So when you start translating things like this, hopefully things will happen. So I'll stop there. We are on the stage, the crux of an expansion to the next phase. I have only a vision. I have no resources. I have credence behind me. If I'm breathing and if the energies want, it will complete. If it doesn't complete, yes, I'll have regret. I could have done it, because it's a lifelong of trolling on this path that has got you to a point of flowering to create this now. You can't do it. If I can't do it, so be it.
Thank you so much for your words, sir. I think we have one of our interns, name is Myra. She wants to ask you something. So, Myra, you can unmute yourself.
Good evening, sir. It was really nice to listen to you talk. I have a question. So, as you said that you spent quite some time in the financial services, and you even reached a strong professional position. So, what was the defining moment, that like knock on the door moment, that made you realize that there was a different purpose waiting for you? And today, when so many young people are like anxious to find their purpose early and sticking to it, what would you say to those who feel pressure to have everything figured out like at an early age, especially knowing that such a turning point can happen at any age?
So, Mara, it's a great question. I wish life was as black and white, as structured, to be able to make a rule book out of it. Life is not that, right? The fact remains, what you control is what you need to focus on. Let me ask you a question. When you breathe, do you know the purpose of breathing? Do you make an effort to breathe? I mean, you don't.
No.
You don't make an effort to breathe, right? It happens. When it happens, you exist for the moment as a human being. Imagine the next breath doesn't come in. That's what it is between your life and death. It's just one breath, right? The fact remains that the purpose is, the modern world wants us to be very purpose driven on every stage, and I say yes, purposes need to be there, goals need to be there. We need to work towards a structured environment and the goal, right? So look at a cube. A cube represents structure. A molecule of a particular element represents a structure, right? In the creative space, you have to break the structure to enter into a not so treaded path. You have to remove the blinkers. You have to enter a non-structured domain. Once you actually start understanding what is there, you have to again create a structure, because today when I'm documenting, I'm writing a book, I'm doing a docu-series, I'm doing recording of music, I'm putting structures around it, right? So that the next generation has a structure to it. So the point I'm trying to say is, this is a creative space is always structure between breaking the structure and getting it back into the structure. But your question is about purpose. Purpose has to emerge out of your work that you do. Purpose, that's the most fulfilling purpose. So what, in my case, I did not read the first book on history of my community with a purpose to do something in the future. I did it because I was embraced in it, right? I was absorbed in it, right? I was fascinated by it, right? I went into 5 years of musicology. I cannot still sing, but I can understand the rags. I still cannot play the tabla, but I can understand the beat. I did my part of going through the process. Today, when we did the docu-series of Guru Nanak, there are 270 verses sung in the rags in which they are written, right? If I did not understand the rags, do you think I would have the vision to say this docu-series needs to be done in a particular style to present the pristine message of what the Indic saints were writing and trying to communicate? I could have picked up the modern music and done it in, because modern music is the music of the masses. And you say, no, you want to be a perfectionist, you want to do it. To be a perfectionist, you need to understand what ABC is made up of, right? So what I'm trying to say is, in the moment, do something other than the traditional goal of the life, which is to earn the bread and butter and get married and support your kids. That's the traditional goal. That has to be there. That's goal. That's not purpose. The purpose has to be something that you should be defining in short bursts, that this period I'm going to be delving into music, I'm going to be delving into X, and I'm going to be delving into Y. There's nothing right or wrong. You might say, I will devote 20 years to something. That's your emerging purpose. Once you've mastered it, like the next breath that comes to you, the purpose will emerge for you. Purpose is never found. Purpose has to come to you, and that coming of the purpose is the most beautiful flowering of the human existence. Does that kind of answer you? I'm not giving any answer, but I'm just beating around the bush.
It was beautiful.
Yes, sir. I understand that it's not just one direct answer. It's just very deep and complicated, and it can't be answered like in a clear way.
I think I've answered it. It might sound deep, it might sound very complicated. It's very simple. Just focus on the worldly goal. Without bread and butter on the table, you ain't be able to do anything in life. Focus on the goal. Goal is not the purpose. Spend your time to nurture your purposes. There has to be, that life is a very shallow life which has been lived only to achieve the goals of existence. Nurture your passions. The day you have done your part, the bigger energy now sees you and says, you have done your part. Let me open the gate for you. That day your purpose will emerge. You will not have to find your purpose. Purpose emerges.
Oh, hello, sir. I listened you somewhere you speaking that you turned at a moment in your life you turned into an atheist, and then seeing your work like allegory and oneness in diversity. I would like to ask you that, like, what advice you would give to the young people out there when it comes to the importance of faith in their life, or to keep some faith in their life, which generally people forget in their day-to-day lives or when they go ahead in their life, in their careers and education.
Well, in my case, I can tell you, I can't talk about someone else. Faith is a very misunderstood word today, right? Faith in what? What the religious institution tries to say. Look, you might look at me and might say, I'm wearing a turban, I'm having a beard. I seem to be very traditional Sikh. To me, this is a cultural gift from the forefathers who raised their hands at a time when the lands at the frontier of the Indian subcontinent was facing some significant challenges. I am very proud of my tradition. I'm very proud of my culture. I will die like this, but it's not my faith. Your identity is not what you see physically. Identity is something deeper inside. My identity is the following. which I have learned from the Indic saints over the period of time, because of my cultural grounding, which of my many other aspects what it has made, and I have been confused for many years, right? The differentiations, the discriminations, the other aspects that I've seen all around me has made me go deeper and deeper to understand that the Indic saints, whom I firmly believe in, are not the people of religious institutions. Because religion is an ism that ties boundaries, that ties rituals, that ties things that you need to perform to achieve. You are your own teacher, you are own disciple. The potential lies within you. You have to surface it, right? You have to differentiate that. To me, all the Indic saints that I'm focusing on of the Bhakti period, they are beautiful amalgamation of people who are social reformers. My value system rests in social reform, in not seeing anyone as inferior or anyone as superior, everyone as unique. Be it on gender, be it on wealth, be it on skills, be it on whatever it is, be it on caste, everyone is unique. The day you start seeing it from that lens, I think that's where it all starts changing. So, to me, while the world will say Nanak is a founder of a faith, I see him as a social reformer. The biggest faith is in that seed of reform that he talks about. I see the biggest reform seed in Kabir, in the others, right? And to me, they are the sources of inspiration. And so therefore, with that understanding, you are looking at the various philosophies that you're trying to understand. What is the faith made up of? Faith is made up of very, very different philosophies, right? But philosophies are the underlying pillars. Faith is the rituals that have been put around those philosophies. And in that, one of the philosophy also happens to be atheism. There's nothing wrong with it. It is good to lose faith. Because when you regain it as a person who was lost for a little while and has found something which is of value. But unless you transcend that journey, you will not be anchored in the depths of the diverse philosophies that we're talking about. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There's nothing right or wrong here. Live your life.
It was like, sir, I found it really progressive and very relatable of an answer. So thank you for this exchange of conversation. We have
Atheism, just to add here, atheism, I think, is misunderstood. Atheism does not, let's put it this way. I've understood, and I was talking to someone today over a cup of tea prior to coming here. I said this. I said, God of yesterday is not the same as the God of today, and it will not be the same as God of tomorrow. Because the God is not something distinct from the ecosystem. They say, right, in our Indic tradition, aham brahmasmi, right? I am that. I am the creator. So this ecosystem is one intertwined element, and if it is evolving, we have to just move with that, and in the evolution resides all kinds of thought processes, and you have to respect. Don't be judgmental that mine is better and right and wrong and the others are wrong. Everything is unique. Learn from every experience. Atheism is one pillar of philosophy. There's nothing wrong with it. It just says, I've lost faith. That's it. It's all right to lose faith at times.
Yes, sir, I very much agree. And thank you for your words. It was great listening to you. We have Miss Rekha Sharma. Actually, she wants to ask you something that would be the last question that we'll be picking up this evening. So, ma'am, you can unmute yourself.
Good evening and Jain, sir and ma'am. Am I audible?
Yep.
Yes, Miss Rekha, you're
Yeah,
audible.
thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. Sir, my question is that what was the most surprising discovery you made while researching Sikh heritage sites?
Most surprising is the outcome. How an entire community walked away from centuries, and Sikh history starts with so-called branded as Sikh history, starts from the birth of Guru Nanak 1469. But it's not true. It's the people of the land who are coming in different layers and going up, right? The histories of the Punjab, the histories of Kashmir, the histories of Sindh, of Balochistan, an entire civilization on the Indus region. One fine day walks away. One fine day just walks away. And I say, the more I've delved into this history, I say, it was never the problem of the Indus region. In fact, when I look at the history, I sometimes say, you know what, how kind of a boomerang comes from, they talk about the butterfly effect in the chaos theory. They say a butterfly flutters in New York and there's a storm that happens in Mumbai. That's how these things are connected. And partition is a classic case of chaos theory coming into the butterfly effect. If you're not aware of the butterfly effect, search after this, just butterfly effect. It's a known theory that's studied as a part of physics, right? A butterfly fluttered in the Gangetic belt to say that Hindus and Muslims cannot stay together. And it happened in 1946 out of Calcutta, where Jinnah calls for, there's already a, push and pulls going on. I'm not going into the entire history. But a butterfly flutters in August 1946 in the form of a direct action day. Results in a riot across Calcutta. Outcome, August 1947 is the Indus region gets divided. Where people were staying there as brothers for ages. And I tell you, I've experienced more love at the grassroots level in my research. Of course, there's an entire Gangetic belt, Muhajir Muslims who have moved there. Their narrative starts, we were moving through Punjab in 1947 and our forefathers got killed. No one tells what happened in March 1947 in the Rawalpindi, where the Hindus and Muslims, Sikhs were massacred. So it's a one thing leading to the other. Choosing to see the lens, from the lens when the narrative starts, defines the entire narrative, right? But when I'm researching inside Pakistan, at the village, in the villages, an 85-year-old man looks at me at Basali and says, "Pachaniya menu? Did you recognize me?" Oh, God forsake! I mean, I'm 59 now. I was 48 that time. I didn't even have a single strand of gray hair. Look at that man's, the moment of emotion that he's seeing a man in a turban coming into his village, and he's probably remembering one of his childhood friends, and he says, "Pachaniya menu? Did you recognize me?" I'm saying, "Main te us zamane da hai nahi," right? And then someone else said, and then he looks at me and says, "Oh, this is the emotion. This the politics cannot understand. This was not Punjab which got divided. It is something that's a butterfly effect." I'll tell you one more story and I'll stop there. I was at the Daftu Gurdwara, a massive building. The people who moved from East Punjab, because all these temples, Gurdwaras went into the Waqf board, right? It became a government property. As I said, no one's destroying them. Nature's acting on them because no one's actually consciously destroying them. The narrative might say they're consciously destroying it. No, nature's acting on them because they are fearful people also. They don't want to destroy a temple. I'll tell you two things. When I was in Burewala and I was inside this place where I didn't know where my companion was taking me. And you have to be very careful because intelligence is following you and how you're researching. I'll not get into all those stories. And I went into this Shaivite temple. And my car went inside and I was excited and elated to see the Shaivite temple. I said, "Wow, what a fancy, what a massive temple this is," right? And I get down, it was a police station. I thought, "Oh shucks, man, these guys got me right into this place and I'll get caught and I'll be sent back now." And I'm afraid. And as I get down out there, the constable, the police head comes on and he says, "Sardarji, Sat Sri Akal," and all, and he starts welcoming me. I didn't realize I walked in with my shoes on. And you know what he tells me? "Sardar Sahab, ye mandir hega. Ki kar rahe ho?" And I looked around and I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I took out my shoes. That's the emotion I'm talking about, right? And the same thing that I want to say with the last piece is that at Daftu Gurdwara, when I went inside, this man's family is from Patiala, and in the partition they moved there. And these properties have all gone to the government, right? And no one cares. Government is not caring about it. What's the incentive they have? They're not trying to create a heritage circuit out there. We're talking about 1947. Now you're talking about 2014. I'm actually researching there. And again, sir, Dafdu Gurdwara. And this man with his family, he's just sitting there on his cot. The Gurdwara is all falling apart. Beautiful frescoes inside. I do my research. He allows me to film. No, nothing to block. He could have stopped me. He's saying, this is my home. Right? And as I'm walking out, he comes and he touches me. He says, Sardar Sahib. And I moved on the side. And he says, Sardar Sahib, bura na manna. I'm saying in Punjabi, I think you'll understand. If you don't understand, ask me. Right? He says, bura na manna, maafi mangda tuade kolo. I apologize, right? And I says, maafi kis gal di? He says, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਹੈ ਅਸੀਂ ਪਟਿਆਲੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ 2 ਵਕਤ ਦੀ ਰੋਟੀ ਸੀ we used to only have two meals a day out there, right? ਤਕਸੀਮ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਪਾਰਟੀਸ਼ਨ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ it's an Urdu word ਤਕਸੀਮ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਪਾਸੇ ਆ ਗਏ ਫਿਰਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਜਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ we had ਹੈਜਾ in this ਫਿਰਦੇ ਰਹੇ 2 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਅਸੀਂ ਦਫਤੂ ਆਏ ਦਫਤੂ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਖਾਲੀ ਸੀਗਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰੇ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਵੜ ਗਏ ਤਾਂ ਦਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਹੀ ਰਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਇਤਨੇ ਪੈਸੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਵੀ 2 ਵਕਤ ਦੀ ਰੋਟੀ ਹੈ ਟੁਡੇ ਆਲਸੋ ਵੀ ਹੈਵ 2 ਵਕਤ ਦੀ ਰੋਟੀ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਇਮਾਰਤ ਨੂੰ ਸੰਭਾਲ ਸਕੀਏ ਮਾਫੀ ਮੰਗਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਯੂ ਨੋ ਵਾਟ ਆਈ ਲਿਟਰਲੀ ਟੋਲਡ ਹਿਮ ਆਈ ਸੈਡ ਜਨਾਬ ਮੈਂ ਕੁਦਰਤ ਕੋਲੋਂ ਕਹਾਂਗਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰੇ ਦੀ ਇਮਾਰਤ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਸਦਾ ਕਾਇਮ ਰਹੇ ਰਾਈਟ this should be always there for you. This is the emotion that we are talking about at the grassroots level. The narratives at a political level are very different. Humans want to live together. No one wants to actually be on others' throat, right? Everyone wants to coexist. If you can't coexist, you are not worthy to be a human.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
So, okay, now I would like to conclude it from my side and ask you the one last question that coming from today's digital paced digital world, so what would be your advice to to be relevant for younger generation to preserve the culture and heritage?
Oh, it's a very loaded question. I don't know what's the answer to this one, but all I can say is that I said earlier is you would be a better human being if you are something more than an engineer and a doctor or an army person, right? So having an interest in finer things of the life is where what's going to differentiate you from the others, right? Where the respect for you over a period of time will grow. Life is a long haul game. Life is not a short haul game, right? Life is a long haul game. Nurture yourself, nurture your other finer things in life through which you will get differentiated and known for. I mean, you are born here, we all are born here, we are here for a few years, we'll all pass away, right? The fact is, what will the world know you for? The world will not know you, I can guarantee you, for the bank balance you created or for the materialistic empire that you created. No one will know you. That'll just pass into someone else. The world will know you for really what you created or what you understood from a bigger social perspective, right? That's all I can say. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's a journey. As long as you go down to the same thing about purpose, right? As long as you're nurturing yourself other than the 9 to 5, I think you're on the right path. It will be confusing, it will be challenging because the world is not wanting you to do that. The world doesn't want you to read a book. The world doesn't want you to do something more, right? The world doesn't want you to go and learn classical music, right? But that's what is going to differentiate you over a period of time.
Thank you, sir. Through your writing, research, and documentation, we came through culture and heritage and Sikh legacy in Pakistan. And thank you so much on behalf of the English Book Depot. And thank you for sharing your work, your vision with us. And thank you everyone for joining. And please continue with us every Friday at 5:30 p.m. by English Book Depot. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir. It was nice listening to you.
Thank you.